Welcome in, everyone, to the Blue Demon Room podcast, where DePaul Athletics is so excited to bring you stories of its student athletes, coaches, and alumni. I'm your host, Casey Standahar, and I'm thrilled in honor of National Athletic Training Month. We have Noreen Vlamakis and Rachel Wilhelm joining us. They're of Rush Physical Therapy. Noreen, you serve as the National Director of Sports Partnerships. Rachel, you are an athletic trainer through Rush Physical Therapy at DePaul University. Thank you both, ladies, so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
So we're celebrating National Athletic Training Month. I want to ask you both, did you both grow up playing sports? I'll start with you, Noreen.
Sure, I did. I played basketball and soccer. Born and raised in the city of Chicago, and always came to the DePaul women's basketball games and looked up to all those athletes, and just really was a basketball girl, through and through. So yes, played sports and dabbled in a little few things here and there, like volleyball and tennis. But yeah, basketball is my jam. So
love it.
Yeah.
Rachel, what about you?
I grew up playing volleyball, and I also did martial arts. I did taekwondo, so spent a lot of time kind of alternating days growing up doing both of those, and spent a lot of time with both of those sports.
That's really cool. Did you both have athletic trainers at the time when you were doing those respective sports?
So I'm way older than her, so it's a totally different beast now with athletic training, but I didn't have one till my senior year in high school, but he was actually our interim anatomy and physiology teacher. So the fact that I got introduced to anatomy and physiology classes in high school because I knew I wanted to get into medicine was great. But then the fact that our teacher at that time had quadruple bypass surgery, I don't mean to laugh at that, but it happened, and we had a sub come in for the remainder of the year, and he was the school athletic trainer. So that's how I got exposed to the profession. That's how it piqued my interest, because I was like, whoa, I could do sports medicine. I could do sports. I could do medicine. It's a beautiful marriage.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
yeah.
But did you have a similar experience, Rachel, or did you have a trainer in school as well?
So I actually was very fortunate. My high school had 3 athletic trainers, which is not always very common. So I was able to work with one of my athletic trainers at the high school level when I hurt my back playing volleyball, and that really exposed me to the profession, where I was very fascinated by the fact that they were able to take a look at my back injury and say, oh, it's likely related to your hip flexors, which is something in the front of your body. So completely.
But it was hurting your back. It's
right,
like crazy how
exactly.
it's all
So
connected.
it was just so bizarre for me to think that that was the possibility when I was younger, and I thought how cool it would be to be able to have that kind of knowledge and make those kinds of decisions. So that inspired me to take anatomy classes in high school as well.
And Noreen, what inspired you to kind of connect both? Was it just the feeling of knowing, like, okay, these are 2 things that I am passionate about and I can mold the 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been a kind of caregiver person at the end of the day, and always wanted to make everyone around me smile, feel happy, feel good. And so I think knowing that I was so intrigued with science, the body, medicine, and how medicine treats and helps people, cures them, whatever it is, that I also was such just, again, a 90s girl growing up in Chicago, Michael Jordan and all of that stuff. Like, sports was my life.
Sure.
So as I'm understanding more about medicine and see that other world out there, that really did it for me. That's when it was like, I'm focusing on this. And that's how I went into college for my undergrad degree, focused on kinesiology, and the rest was there.
So I want to get to that too.
Yeah.
What does the education look like that leads you to the path that you're at now?
Yeah. So I'll start again. I'm way older than her. So back in the day, so we had to do, as an athletic trainer, you could do any undergraduate degree, movement science, kinesiology, which is essentially movement science. Some had athletic training, some had physiology, whatever it may be. But through that undergrad 4-year degree, you would have to do 1,500 hours of immersive internship. So at that time, I was a student at University of Illinois at Chicago, so UIC, and I for each semester, worked with a different team as a student athletic trainer. So I wasn't certified, I wasn't licensed, but at that time you worked under the supervision of a physician and a licensed certified athletic trainer. So on top of being a full-time student, working part-time, and also putting 1,500 hours of internship for my studies to be able to sit for the board exam.
Right.
That was a career path. So then,
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So, but I wouldn't take that experience away, because for me, no biases to the new model, how it is, but it really just gets you exposed to what true college athletic training is, because it can be a grind, and if you're not ready for that, then you're gonna want to leave the profession.
Yeah.
Right?
So what does the new model look like? Rachel?
So I went to St. Louis University with the 5-year direct admit program. So it's a 3+2 type program where you do 3 years of undergraduate and then directly go into your 2-year graduate degree, which I believe is the more common model that's being used nowadays, because in 2020, I believe is the year, they made it a requirement that athletic training programs need to be master's programs. So I did my 3 years of undergraduate work, did a summer class of gross anatomy that led directly into my 2 years of grad school. And throughout that time, those 2 years, we were required to do clinical immersions at the same time as taking all your coursework. So your first year as a graduate student, you're required to do 1 year or 1 semester at a high school and another semester at a college or university. So I did my first semester at Lindbergh High School out in St. Louis, and then I did my next semester directly with SLU, with St. Louis University's women's basketball team and cross-country teams. And then your summer, you have to find your own summer internship. So I worked with the Schaumburg Boomers, which is a professional baseball team out in the Chicago suburbs. And then the following year, you spend your whole year with 1 clinical placement. You kind of talk to your professors about where you potentially see yourself working post-grad. So I did mine at SIUE, Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville, and spent almost the whole year there, if not for that little bit of COVID at the end that sent us home. But then you finish up graduating and you spend a lot of that last semester studying for your boards. So we take our Board of Certification BOC exam, and then that way we can get our licenses and accreditations.
Sure. I imagine the cross country was one of the toughest. I mean, I feel like that's where a lot of the injuries would be the toughest.
Yeah, a lot of chronic stuff, a lot of consistent work, and then SLU hosts a track and field and cross country meet for a lot of schools. So then we were in charge of working shifts and kind of running the whole medical care side of that.
Very cool. Noreen, what is the partnership that DePaul has with Rush Therapy? Can you kind of explain that partnership?
Yeah, sure. So we're Rush Physical Therapy in the Chicagoland area and northern Indiana, and we've got about 90 centers, give or take, around the area. But we're outpatient physical therapy, and we partner with a lot of universities and high schools with providing either physical therapy services and or athletic training services, outreach athletic training services, where Rachel, provides the care here to the student athletes. So we started with DePaul University actually around 2002, I believe, or 2003. So it's been a very long partnership. And at that time, we had the physical therapist on site for about 40 hours a week, treating the athletes, right here in the tiny athletic training room that it was. So, and Kristen Neisler at that time, who's the school physical therapist through NovaCare, because we were NovaCare.
That's right.
Before, was part Team PT for a long time. Then Stacy Dittmer came involved, and so that started the relationship of the physical therapy on-site care, because the school needed extra support. And then it evolved to about I think 2015, 16, where we added the additional outreach athletic training support. So that's where Rachel serves in that role currently. But in 2020, December 2020, NovaCare, under the brand name, under the parent company, Select Medical, they entered a joint venture with Rush Medical here in Chicago, and we all know Rush. Rush is
Right. It's huge.
it's huge, and it's a excellent health system. So we entered into that joint venture in December. We basically took the Rush name and made it Rush Physical Therapy, and said goodbye to NovaCare, in the Chicagoland area. The formal name, I think, is Rush Physical Therapy in partnership with NovaCare Rehabilitation. So it's a mouthful.
Mouthful, yeah.
Yes, but at the end of the day, we're still NovaCare for those who know us as NovaCare, but we are Rush Physical Therapy under Select Medical in a joint venture with Rush Medical.
Okay, got
Confusing,
it.
right?
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's really important to DePaul. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
Rachel, you've worked with all sorts of athletes, and you just mentioned kind of the different levels of experience you got when you were, doing those clinical immersions. So for you, what is your favorite sport to work with?
I feel like maybe it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I feel like I get a little bit of recency bias. Any sport I'm working with at the time seems to be my favorite.
Okay.
When I was in college, I was really trying to pursue women's basketball. I had a great time working with that sport when I was at SLU, so that played a huge factor into why I got assigned to SIUE, was I really wanted to work with Division I women's basketball. That being said, I have not worked with women's basketball since I graduated.
Really?
Yeah, so I would actually say right now, soccer is a really big sport for me. I love working with it. I've done about 4 years of soccer at this point at the collegiate level. It has a really great mix of acute and chronic injuries. So those quick recent ones versus the ones that go a little bit more long term, that you get to work with those athletes for a really long time. And you really get to see them return to sport and see the athletes that you've been working with for a long time find success in their sport again after injury, and it's incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah.
And
There's
then
a
it's
reward at the end. It feels good.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And it's just really a fun and fast-paced sport to watch. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, so how does the sport assignments work? I mean, do you need to be an expert in the sport beforehand, or are you kind of learning as you go? Like, how does that work? Either of you can answer.
Honestly, sport assignment is a lot of times just related to availability. So I actually worked with the DePaul softball team through a Rush Physical Therapy contract back in last spring. So then once that contract ended, DePaul reached out to me to let me know that there was another open opportunity in working with men's soccer and men's golf. So it was pretty much happenstance, but I think that just goes to show the importance of forming good relationships with the people you're working with, because you never know what kind of opportunities are going to arise.
Right.
Yeah. And no, I would say no, you don't have to be an expert in the sport. I've never played soccer in my life. But I think it's really important to understand the mechanics and the motions that go along with that sport, which again is why it's incredibly important to do clinicals, because you get to learn under mentors who have worked with that sport, who know that sport, and you can experience a ton of different sports and learn more about them, so you can adjust your rehab and therapy protocols to directly address and mimic motions they're going to be doing on the field.
How much of your job is healing and preventing injury versus actually helping the athlete improve their performance?
I would say my role at DePaul is a lot more in the healing area when it comes to injuries. At the Division I level, and specifically at DePaul, we have a phenomenal sports performance team who is including the strength and conditioning coach and our sports dietitian. So they play the bigger factor when it comes to sports performance and improving everything. There is a little bit here and there that I do on that side of things. For example, I do some force frame testing on our soccer players, which is just using a machine to test different muscles and different functions and how strong they are, and compare the different strength of the different limbs. So I'm able to share that data with our strength and conditioning coach, Nate, and he's able to put together a whole spreadsheet to compare the strength of limbs and the strength of different motions. And I can use that data for comparing if an athlete gets injured, I can say, okay, this is what their baseline was. We want to try and get this muscle to be able to return to whatever that strength level is. But then Nate can also use that information to improve their performance on the field.
So we know golf is obviously a very strenuous sport, but I think it appears less physical to the naked eye. So especially compared to soccer. So what kind of injuries or training are you handling with golf?
With golf, I'm getting a lot of back injuries, I would say, and a lot of what I would describe as kinetic chain injuries. So what that means is your whole body is connected. So anytime you get an injury in one place, you can get something going on in another area of your body from referred pain. So to give you an example, with golf, say you do have a back injury, you're maybe limited in motion. Golf swings obviously require a lot of torque, torsion, twisting of the body. So if you hurt your back and you can't twist as much, what else has to change so they can still get that golf swing? They may be changing the way their knee moves, their ankle, their foot, etc. And then maybe that unnatural motion is causing pain in the foot. Inherently, it's not a foot injury. It's something that came up because they were having issues with their back. So if we address the thing going on in their back, that may then resolve the symptoms of the foot. So it's a lot of what the connected injuries, the referred pain, what we would call kinetic chain injuries.
Yeah, or vice versa, right? So
Yeah,
if
exactly.
the ankle is not moving well, because everything is connected to the ground, and that's how you generate your energy and your force and power. And so gotta look above and below the
Yeah.
joint always and see how things are connected and contribute to the source of the pain.
That's fascinating. It seems a lot more complicated for sure. What would you tell someone who is older and trying to keep up their golf game and
Like
wanting
me.
to keep playing to avoid getting injured?
I think something that's incredibly important to focus on is, again, with the back and the trunk, and then I'd throw the shoulder in as well, focusing on mobility. So when we say mobility, it's not just that flexibility of the muscles and the stretching and all that. It's actually more, I would say, about the health of the joint and making sure that your joints can move in all the directions they need to, that your shoulder can come all the way back for your swing, that your spine is capable of doing all the twisting motions
Right.
that are necessary for the swing. So just maintaining that and being able to get all the regular body functions and movements that are needed in your joints to get good form.
I want to go back to soccer really quickly because I know you mentioned really enjoying working with the soccer teams. Was your first season with men's soccer was last year. What did you learn from that season that you would want to bring into the following season?
I think I've learned that I need to be incredibly straightforward and not have a lot of leeway when it comes to the restrictions I'm putting on them for injuries and recovery and what they're allowed to do in practice. We have a big group of incredibly hard workers on the soccer team. So if I gave them an inch, they would take a mile. They want to be out on that field working hard, playing, and I need to make sure that they are doing that as safely as possible. So I need to be very strong in my answers and knowing exactly what I need them to do and what I need them not to do.
Got it.
And I feel like, so learning your background a little bit more, I worked with cross country, track, and soccer as well, amongst a few others. But those two athletes are somewhat similar in the way that they're very in tune with their body. They know when something hurts. They know when something's off. They know when, they're just not performing at their best. And they will, like you said, they'll talk about it, but you have to approach each person individually because everyone heals differently, everyone responds differently to treatment. But the one thing that stays consistent is being consistent and being straightforward about this is what you need to do and this is how we're going to get you back to the field.
Got it.
And it's a day-by-day thing that we're going to check your progress and whatnot. So, but transparency, communication, and straightforward is the best key for that.
Noreen, specifically, I want to ask you, you were a graduate assistant athletic trainer here at DePaul, and you worked with men's and women's soccer plus track and field. So I kind of want to know your full circle moment now working with DePaul.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. At least I think it is. So, but yeah, became a graduate assistant athletic trainer. applied for it, got it, and at that time, again, when it was okay to have graduate assistant athletic trainers, they don't do that now anymore. But I was able to get my studies paid for, so tuition was covered, and I did a master's of education and leadership, and then on top of that, had the sports assignments of men's soccer, women's soccer, and track and field. So each semester in season, right? So that was really the first time that I got to see how the physical therapy dynamic worked along with an athletic trainer. And that was Kristen Neisler, as I mentioned earlier. She was the team PT on site. And that's when I was exposed to NovaCare and just that team approach, that team-based approach model for treating the athlete as a whole. Because as Rachel said, to this day now, we have mental health, we have nutrition, we have strength and conditioning coach, we have all those things that help student athletes. And so being in that position lots of years ago, many years ago, I was able to just see how that all worked together and just showed like, you know what, we all have different strengths and experiences. And so when we work together, it's a better mix to make sure the athlete is taken care of, right?
Sure.
So that was 20 years ago, saw that dynamic, and, you know, later on became the person who was managing the athletic training services account specifically back in 2015. So very close with the ins and outs of it all, and with Sue Walsh and whatnot. And then now in my recent role, I just kind of oversee the partnership health, if you will. And but yeah, that was my first encounter with seeing that model, and I loved it. And I think maybe without knowing it, that's how I came back to NovaCare, so / Rush Physical Therapy.
Yeah,
So
just kind of led you all back.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Rachel, what does your typical day look like during a season? You know, what are you preparing? What are you kind of doing in-game, post-game, before the game?
Yeah, so I would say during season, teams who are in season typically get first pick of field time. So we had very middle of the day practices majority of the time. So it was almost like a 9 to 5 for me. I would come in a couple hours before practice, and all the athletes would sign up for treatments, for evaluations. So any new injuries that come up, take a look at them, provide any treatment methods, whether that's something with cupping, soft tissue massage, and then, therapeutic exercise. We can use electrical stimulation, hot packs. Like, we have all the resources here that we're able to really help out athletes and help them be the best they can be. Head out to practice. We're covering every practice when it comes to soccer. We're out there with them. So anything happens in the moment, I'm there. And then same thing afterwards, kind of post-practice, treatments, rehab, taking care of anything to help recover from the day. And then student athletes, they have to go to class. So I then usually take that amount of time to kind of finish paperwork, and there's more that goes into paperwork than people realize.
Yeah,
so they're always asking me, what are you writing on that clipboard? So I'm, having to record every treatment I do, all of the exercises I give them. And then, I'm filing insurance claims. I'm ordering contacts for them. I'm doing all the ins and outs that are the little things. So that takes plenty of time out of my day.
This question is for both of you. As we learn, mental health is obviously a part of this as well, right? It can impact a athlete's performance a lot. So maybe the physical turns into a mental thing. So how are you both treating things that might be mental as well?
Sure. Mental health is critical to an athlete and non-athlete, right? So it affects daily function, and sometimes these athletes, this is their very first injury, especially at this high level, and it can be very devastating to them. And it really depends on a lot of different factors, but the way that I like to summarize it is it's a grieving process when you have an injury, and with any grieving process, there's no specific order of the stages, whether it's bargaining, denial, acceptance. There's no specific, route with that, but those are the stages that they may be going through and feeling isolated and feeling separated from the team, and a lot of times a loss of identity because sports is all they are. Right. So it's up to us as athletic trainers and friends and coaches and other administrators to be cognizant of that and make sure to keep the athlete involved in the team aspect. If that means they're doing rehab with Rachel right before a training session, and she's like, well, hey, you could actually go and do the bike out on the field so you could see what training is about and be part of the team. So just being creative and mixing some things up to make sure that the inclusion is there and the belonging is there. And then beyond that, if things are kind of out of the scope of our practice, this is where we recommend a mental health counselor. And back when I was here, we did have a sports psychologist, which every person who had a significant injury had to see her and had to go through the counseling sessions because, as I mentioned, it is very devastating for them. And I think we have to stay positive, but we have to stay realistic. We have to communicate the whole path of rehab and what can happen. And I think sometimes, if you say, oh, you'll be back in 4 to 6 weeks, they hold on to that. And if that doesn't happen, they get very, very disappointed. So you have to just be transparent of, we're going to take it day by day. And, let's work through this. And so one of my biggest things is let's celebrate the tiny victories and take one day at a time, and we'll get there. Just do the hard work, be kind to yourself, and we'll get there.
You're also like an actual therapist, too, in a way, not just physical therapist as well. Rachel, any more on that you feel is super important mentally?
I think sometimes we get so focused on the sport aspect of the athletes' lives. Obviously, that is the direct impact we have on the majority of the time is sport related. But I think as you kind of joked about, we're almost a little bit like a therapist. They're coming into the athletic training room and we get to know about their personal lives as well. And I think making sure to emphasize during this process that their whole identity is not that they're just an athlete, but that they're also a human being and they have other things going on in their lives, and checking in on that aspect and making sure that they know that they're seen as a human being and not just, part of this team.
What would you both say to someone that wants to pursue the career path that you both have?
You want to go first?
Sure. I think you have to be an incredibly hard worker and be willing to do the work. Unfortunately, with athletic training, it's not always going to be a fully staffed position. We're very lucky to have a good staff, a good full staff of athletic trainers at DePaul right now. But a lot of times you're understaffed, and even if you do have a full staff, people get sick, people need to step in. You have to sometimes step up and do extra work and come in at odd hours that you may not usually be doing that's going to infringe on maybe your personal life. And, setting boundaries and having, work-life balance is incredibly important. Yeah. But sometimes you do have to go beyond that and come in at 6 a.m. for somebody else's practice and then go to your own practice and kind of make sure that you're just willing and able to do that work.
Noreen?
Yeah. There's always a team behind the team, right? Yeah. For anything that to support those student athletes. But yeah, I think for me, as if you're a young professional or not even like a high school student and you're working with your athletic trainer like Rachel or I got to, just put yourself out there, get exposed to a lot of different settings, see what it really entails to be an athletic trainer. I think with many new athletic trainers that come in, I've hired hundreds of athletic trainers over my career, and it's not a 9 to 5, especially in the Division I setting, unless you're fully staffed and have some great structure around the clinic hours and whatnot, the athletic training room. But just get yourself exposed, put yourself in different settings, even observe at a physical therapy clinic too, because that's a different style. If you are really, if you enjoy that 9 to 5 hour and just want to have your social life and weekends and everything, maybe physician extending is for you, because physicians use athletic trainers as physician extenders, okay? Get yourself exposed to secondary schools. A lot of people love secondary schools. For me, I didn't like the fact that because they were under 18, I really couldn't do as much as I thought I could for the student athlete. Everything goes through the guardian or parent. So, but you get really connected with those young athletes. They're silly, they're goofy, and it's just a lot of people like that high school setting. And then in the collegiate setting, there's a variance between D1 to D3, NAIA. Sometimes D3 schools, you only have 2 athletic trainers managing like 500 athletes,
wow.
where you have 9 athletic trainers here managing I think it's about 200 athletes here. So different expectations, different requirements, different structure, different people you're working with. Get yourself exposed, be aware, and just, really dig deep into what do you enjoy out of the sports medicine space. It's not going to be all about the glory and the Super Bowl rings and all that, maybe if you work hard. But yeah, I mean, then obviously there's professional level, which is a grind, right?
Sure.
You gotta put yourself in an internship and just fully dedicate yourself to the career. So,
I love that. For both of you, what would you say are some of the personality traits you have to have? I imagine being empathetic is really important, and patience, but a couple that come to mind that you think really stand out that make you both really great at your jobs.
Let me start. Yeah. Okay. I think, yes, patience is key. And knowing you have to be resourceful. You have to be able to know things aren't personal, that everyone has different reactions, different perceptions, and different, realities for that matter. So I think just having the ability to be resourceful, quick on your feet, adaptable is key, because in athletics, nothing is straightforward unless Rachel's telling you how to do your rehab. So, but no, nothing is you could have a coach cancel a training session at the last minute, and that derails a few other things, or someone gets sick. So I think just in general, you have to be adaptable, patient, understanding, and the medicine's there. It's more about people management and your exchange, your communication with people. So I think that's more important than, I shouldn't say more important, but that is critical to that medicine care.
Okay, last question for you both.
Okay.
Outside of your day-to-day jobs, do you like watching any particular sports or teams, or is there maybe a dream team or sport you'd want to work with in the future?
I'm personally a very big NHL fan. I'm a very big Blackhawks fan. So I love watching hockey. I did some work with hockey at the collegiate level for a few years, and just being able to watch the Blackhawks is really fun for me. And then I'm a huge Olympics fan. We had it on in the athletic training room when the Olympics were going on, and we're all big fans. So,
well, hopefully in 2026, when the Olympics are in Milan, and maybe the Blackhawks will be even better that year too.
Let's hope. I think there's hope on the horizon.
Yeah. Noreen, what about
another
for you?
miracle, right? For me, I actually love watching college volleyball. I was also a softball athletic trainer at UIC for many years, and love the sport and the competition, and just how excited the girls get too. So I love watching volleyball, softball, and I love Olympics as well. And then through marriage, I'm a Liverpool FC fan, so soccer is on a lot.
Yes.
But I do like soccer. I'm not going to say I
Right.
don't. And I have a crush on Virgil van Dijk. So
So that's why you want to watch even more.
yeah, that's what I'm into. Sorry,
it.
hubby. But no, those are the sports that I enjoy to watch, and I do like live games too.
Yeah. Well, ladies, thank you so much for being here today on the Blue Demon Room podcast. We're so grateful for you, and I know that the student athletes at DePaul and all over are really grateful for you guys doing what you do. So we really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, that was Rachel and Noreen on the Blue Demon Room podcast. Tune in next time. We'll see you around.